Welcome to the Natural History Cupboard. Come on in.
And welcome back to the Natural History Cupboard podcast, the place where the weird and wonderful parts of the natural world come together. I'm your host, Gareth, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Aaron. Aaron, what have you been up to?
Not really anything, actually, because we just getting over all the organization of my daughter's birthday and having the family here and all that. And we decided to, because we're gonna be visiting them for Yule, shall we say, the festive season. We decided that she really wanted the Christmas decks up, so we got the Christmas decks up. That actually brings me on to something. May I address the Allosaurus in the room?
You may. Are you going to talk to it? Or...
Yeah. Hello. You might notice that we have a fiery Allosaurus this week.
I like it.
I actually think it fits better than the green lights a little bit. Although I do like the green, but that's because I actually ordered the green lights for the Death Star, which is my Christmas tree topper. And now that we have the Christmas tree up, we have to put the Yuletide tree topper.
Nothing says Christmas like a giant planet-sized space station ready to destroy things.
Well, we're not religious in this household, and
you worship under Vader.
No, all I was going to say is, so there's no point having an angel. Now, everyone who has a star is as far as I'm aware, is actually incorrect, because the star, if I remember this right, according to astrophysics and stuff, what they would have been looking at.
Can't put a star on a tree?
No, but that star that the mages followed in the story, if you actually look at these things, what they were actually looking at is the evening star? The evening star.
So Venus.
Venus. It's a planet, so it's not. It shouldn't be a star on top of a tree. It should be a planet.
I've got a star for mine, although I haven't got my tree up yet, because I'm very much a firm believer that December.
Did it in November. So you did it November 17th. So yeah, that's.
I mean, it's all it's all sorted for you now. You don't have to worry.
Exactly, but yeah, if it's either you're religious and you put an angel on your tree, I'm not, so it's not going up there. And also, I like science, and science says that if that star is, if what they're looking at was something in space, it was a planet, not a star. So there's not a star going on my tree. So there's a Death Star instead, because that's far more in tune.
I thought you were going to say realistic.
No, far more in tune. Well, under the next presidential administration, who knows? But yeah, so that is why we now have these red LEDs to.
I like it,
to replace it. But yeah, there's something.
You get some color changing ones, so just see it scroll through.
Yeah, there's something cool about it though, isn't it? It's fiery. It's gone from an Allosaurus skull to a Charizard skull. What about you? What have you been up
to? Getting very wet.
Oh yeah,
got very wet today. Went and did the second bird watching trip with my students, and we were standing there on a very wet Frevington Quay.
Yeah.
And they were all complaining because it was wet. Some of them didn't bring a coat, I'd like to point out. Even though they were fully aware of what the weather is like in Britain. So that was fun. Going, where's your coat? Oh, I didn't think I need one. Okay.
I can't.
Luckily, we provided some umbrellas.
I can't sympathize with I didn't think I'd need one. However, in defense of some non-coat wearers, I can't stand. I can't. You might remember this from our days in the zoo, but I would refuse to wear waterproofs because it was always too hot to wear full waterproofs. But if you only wear a coat, the rainwater just drips off onto your trousers, and then your trousers are so damn uncomfortable. I'd rather just be soaked through.
But I'd always. Oh well, my trousers are always the. Cargo trousers, cotton ones, so they dry out quicker. So I always found that even if I did get completely soaked trousers from the rain, they would dry off in about half an hour, so it wasn't that much of an issue.
He says this,
But I
He
worked
was
with
drying
reptiles.
off in a reptile room.
It was lovely and warm.
If I wasn't staring at lions, I was staring at wolves. And if it wasn't wolves, it was tigers.
Your
or
choice to
leopards.
work with those animals that live outside.
This is true, but that's why you don't dry off.
That's why you wear waterproofs. But apart from that, I redid one of my plant tanks, so we're reshifting things around at home, and I took one of what was a stick insect tank, Exoterra, and upgraded from my little one that's in the kitchen to a massive one, which I've now taken all the little cutting plants out of the little tank and put into the bigger one to basically get them to supercharge and grow. So all my little specimen plants are in there, so I can take cuttings off them, replant them in there, and have multiples of different plants. And it's getting there. We've got a few different things in there at the moment. So it looks nice as well. You walk in the kitchen, it draws your eye.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it looks. Apart from that, you've got a little figurine of Commander Cody in there.
Commander Cody
and Bosk.
Will be done, my lord.
In there, don't know why. Just always have.
That's a random one. But
yeah, they just sort of sit in that little tank, hidden in little spots.
Is that Lego?
No.
I was going to say I don't think I've ever seen a Bosk Lego figure.
That's a good point.
There will be one, but I haven't seen it.
But yeah, apart from that, I don't think there's been. I was going through some of my other stuff as well. I found my rhino footprint and my tiger footprints and that.
Oh yeah.
They're in a box, just sorting all of those bits and pieces out as well. A lot of random things that could probably come in the cupboard and sit in the cabinet there. But yeah, that's about all for me really. Didn't see anything majorly interesting bird watching. Saw lots of egrets and a whimbrel.
We went down to see if we could see the otter on the tour, but didn't see it.
Nah, they're quite hard to spot at the moment, I think.
Can I tell you something exciting?
Yeah.
From the podcast, we have a new Patreon member and we have a new subscriber to our YouTube.
Ah.
Yeah, so that's really cool. So thank you for that.
That was a nice one to say. Oh, should we head into the news?
Let's do it.
It's the news!
Right, well, we're into this week's news. Aaron, what are we doing?
Well, my first article comes to us from phys.org, and it's a really interesting one, actually. It's chlorine mixed with cocoa butter could actually protect corals from disease and reduce antibiotic pollution.
And make the worst cocktail ever.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. Like I say, I wasn't expecting to cover anything like this, to be honest. But basically, a paste that is made up of chlorine and cocoa butter mixture is basically being looked at as an alternative to the antibiotics that are currently used to treat. I'm going to have to read this one. Stony coral tissue loss disease. Now, this disease is highly infectious. It has a high rate of fatality, mortality, and it's pretty indiscriminate, and it's attacking Atlantic coral species as we speak. Now, the idea is that you apply this to the lesions that this disease causes on coral reefs, coral species, sorry, and it kept about a median tissue loss over the course of 80 days under 18%.
Now, not bad.
No, it's not bad. With antibiotics, it's a lot less, which makes it better. But this is like a stepping stone. So hopefully this will lead to bigger things. The problem with antibiotics, of course, is then that is then leaching out into the wider ocean and it causes
bigger issues,
like antibiotic resistance, which is a huge issue right now. So hopefully this is going to be a step in the direction of combating both antibiotic resistance and this terrible disease facing corals.
So my first news article comes from Sci News, and in fact, it was released today, 5 hours ago. So pretty much up to date. Yeah, exactly. Although by the time you see this, it will be a week old. So
yeah, of course.
Anyway, this is from Sci News, and it's the news that a Jurassic pterosaur with an unusually short but stiff and pointed tail has been found. It's been called Scyphosaurus bravaca, which I believe means spear tail from Bavaria,
Hmm.
That's a funky name. That's pretty good. A species of pterosaur that lived around 149 million years ago, what is now southern Germany. Basically helps to bridge the gap between early monofenestraton pterosaurs and the later members of the pterodactyloids. Basically, the very earliest pterosaur, sort of variations up to the much later ones.
Right.
So yeah, new pterosaur. It looks pretty cool. It's got a normal sort of straight beak, but then almost like a hatchet laid. Not a hatchet, a machete laid down its beak on top like a crest.
The picture was pretty cool in the article, yeah. So my next one comes to us from Live Science, another one that I like to use. And the headline is Plastic-Eating Mealworms Native to Africa Discovered. So the larvae of the African beetle genus Amphitobius, better known as the lesser mealworm, are the latest species of mealworm to be discovered to have an ability to degrade plastic. The bacteria in the larvae's gut produces an enzyme that not only breaks down the plastic, which polystyrene is what they use, but that in doing so, it renders it completely harmless to the animal as it passes through them. So there's no detriment to the animal itself. At the moment, the mealworms can consume 50% of the plastic fed to them, with efficiency increased when it's been mixed with bran and some of the other nicer food that they get as well. But researchers are looking at ways to increase the population densities of the bacteria in their guts, hoping that in turn this improves the plastic degradation efficiency of the mealworms themselves.
So they're a different group entirely to what you would consider mealworms that you would buy for your pet reptile, which are tembranoids, and I believe are North American in origin.
They are North American.
But both can do the same thing of breaking down polystyrene. And in fact, do you remember I had my polystyrene mealworm eating exhibit at the zoo?
Which you did.
Turned out to be very popular.
Yeah.
They had the option of bran and polystyrene, and they basically spent most of their time climbing into the polystyrene structure and eating that to pieces and turning it into basically like sand.
From what I understand as well, it doesn't just not harm the animal as it goes through because of the job being done by the bacteria. That enzyme actually does degrade the plastic.
It renders it inert. And it comes out like a sand. It was amazing.
So really cool.
Yeah. Well, my next one is, I've got two sad stories now, unfortunately. The first one is an RSPB reserve. This is coming from the BBC. Is set to shut loss-making nature reserve shop. So the nature reserve isn't shutting, but the shop at RSPB Dungeness is likely to close in 2025. And that's basically because the charity, like many other charity and different organizations, is not making enough money to be able to keep loss-making parts of the business going, which is sad because it means that the confirmation of the shop going will basically mean that there will just be the reserve there in a lot of ways. So it's confirmed it would continue to own and manage the Dungeness Reserve, and that the visitor centre would remain open, but the charity is basically keeping essential work going, and unfortunately the shop is not. So if you if you've got a load of money and want the Dungeness shop down in Kent to stay open, go and donate it to the RSPB. You could do worse things with it, believe me.
Well, my final article of this section anyway is from BBC Wildlife, the Wildlife magazine. And the headline is 6-foot-long big cat caught on camera by English road worker, but is it really a panther?
Hang on, let me get ready to find a big cat. Okay, now.
Yeah, you're ready now.
Everywhere. They're everywhere.
Here's what I expect to say. Now this actually was going to be my main article, but it just sounded like I was just ranting. So I got rid of it, because if the whole big cat thing does anything, positive. It's that it keeps people interested in the wild and keeps them
I think
looking
you
for
say
things.
keeps them busy.
Yeah.
They could be doing far
Keep
worse things.
the kids off the streets. But yeah, another case of mistaken identity, unfortunately. As a road worker in Baston, North Peterborough, has mistaken a domestic cat for a panther, as is almost always the case if it's not a muntjac. In the latest spate of big cat sightings from across the UK, they do seem to have crept up again. In this case, the witness, Mr. Dobney, has neither the big cat expert, Dr. Luke Hunter, and the phantom British cat chaser, Rick Minter, on his side. Because Hunter himself was quoted as saying he's 100% certain it's a moggy, and Minter couldn't be sure enough that it's a big cat from the evidence provided. Regardless, when Dr. Hunter speaks on big cats, people would do well to listen. He knows his stuff. And I myself have seen the footage. And for my own part, everything about that footage screams domestic cat. There is not a single thing about that footage that looks remotely, apart from the fact that it's cat shaped, looks remotely like a big cat. The ears are wrong, the tail is wrong, even the gait, the locomotion, the body language,
size,
everything about it is wrong. Yeah, I was going to say, and that is before you even get onto size.
So yeah. I do love a big cat story. Keeps them off the streets. Keeps them busy. So unfortunately, my final one is a sad one again. It's from the BBC, and it's the news that a baby red panda has died from fireworks stress at Edinburgh Zoo. And this happened on the 14th, so earlier this week, basically.
Yep.
Edinburgh Zoo's baby red panda has unfortunately died from stress caused by fireworks on bonfire night, according to the zoo's vets. The 3-month-old cub, Roxy, choked on her own vomit as basically pyrotechnics were set off across the city. Roxy's mother, Ginger, also died unexpectedly 5 days earlier, and the vets say they cannot rule out it being linked to the fireworks noise. And this is one of my big hates of fireworks. I think they're good. I don't hate fireworks in the sense of, oh, it's a boring thing. What I do dislike is people indiscriminately setting them off. So it's one of those things that if you live in Australia, you can't do that, because if you try and set them off this time of the year in Australia, you'll likely burn half of the state down. So it's illegal to buy them in a lot of places, depending on the state rules. In parts of America, I'm not sure, but certainly there are parts of America where if you did this, you'd likely burn most of the state down. I mean, there are bigger issues as well. But the biggest thing is people setting off fireworks indiscriminately because they'll go and buy them in Asda or Tesco's or somewhere like that. The worst thing about that, apart from the fact that the noise and stress can damage people's pets, psychologically and physically in the case of this red panda.
Humans as well.
And humans.
PTSD and all that.
But it's not just that. They look rubbish. When you go out and go, yeah, I've spent £50 on fireworks. What'd you get? I got 2 rockets.
Yeah. And a sparkler.
That's it, kids. That's the fireworks show over. And it just looks rubbish. It's always pathetic. You go to one of these big organized ones, they're really amazing, especially if they set them to music and everything. It's a real spectacle. Personally, I think we should be going more along the lines of using drones. Yeah, those those massive swarms of drones that make all those different pictures.
Well, you mentioned Australia. I think Sydney did it for New Year's, was it? They had a massive drone display and it just looked like fireworks. Yeah, but a little bit cooler.
And without the massive bangs. You don't need the bangs.
And the litter.
And the litter as well. And the bushfires and all the negative bits.
And I've always wanted to see the firework from Bilbo's birthday where it turns into the dragon.
You could do that.
Only do that with drones. Yeah. You can't do that with fireworks.
But I mean, I say this as well because a couple of weeks ago, when bonfire night and everything was on, somebody decided to set some off like 2 doors away from my house, and it sounded like all of a sudden the house was being hit with mortar shells. It was genuinely like, what the hell is that? Went outside and you could see, if one of them had gone wrong, it would have come rocketing down the street and would have hit people's houses. So I sound very sort of like, get off my lawn, but
you are.
Get drones. Get drones. They're so much better.
Speaking as someone who really appreciates fireworks, the ones that you buy in the store are crap.
Yeah.
And I've kind of come to a point where like just anyone being able to get them, it's different. Like I know we didn't, but if we were going to get some, I know that I'm very conscientious about what I'm doing. Not everybody is going to be like that.
Not everyone's safety first.
And well, I wouldn't say I'm safety first, but I certainly care more about like, I care about my family and I care about like the people around me, how they feel.
Blowing up the neighbor's house.
Animals, especially, in fact, animals more than humans in many cases. But yeah, not everyone's like that. So.
But yeah, it's sad news. Red pandas are, an endangered species.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and they were just celebrating it as well.
Yeah,
like, it's in recent memory. Because I remember thinking, shall I cover that? And in the end, I didn't cover its birth. So
yeah,
that was almost a discussion topic in itself. But we're about to move on into the discussion topic, and that's with me. And actually, to be honest, the fireworks would have made a better discussion than this one, because this is news. It's interesting news, but it's not. There's not a lot to discuss. I would
fair enough.
This one comes to us from Sci News. So our main topic today is 80 million year old enantiornithine. And if you're wondering what enantiornithine means, that's opposite bird.
That isn't a bird that walks on the ground
and walks backwards.
Yeah,
walks backwards on the ground, flies on the ground and walks in the sky. 80 million year old enantiornithine fossil fills the gap between Archaeopteryx and modern birds. So this stunning remains uncovered in 2016 by paleontologists have been described as a newly identified species of enantiornithine named Navarornis hestii. Hestiae. The creature lived 80 million years ago in what we now call Brazil, and it was about the size of your average sparrow. Now, despite its diminutive stature, the animal had a cerebrum larger than that of Archaeopteryx.
Brainy bird.
A very brainy bird, yeah. And this could mean the species had more advanced cognitive abilities than the earlier bird-like dinosaurs. Interestingly, the other side of that coin is that other parts of the brain were more primitive than those of modern birds, the dinosaurs that we see around us today. The example that the article gives is that that of the size of the cerebellum, which is less developed and suggests an inability for complex flight control.
So it was just a bit rubbish at flying.
It was a little bit not as well refined.
I can do straight lines and up and down, and that's it.
Flying in 2 dimensions. Researcher at the University of Cambridge, Dr. Guillermo Navalon, advises that this species is a near perfect intermediary between the two factions of Archaeopteryx, obviously, and modern birds. Not just Archaeopteryx either. I'm using that one because it's the most famous example. Comparing the Navarornis specimen to a missing piece of a puzzle, which is kind of exactly what it's displaying here. The site of this discovery, Williams Quarry, in the Adamantina. I almost said adamantium.
And the adamantium.
Because I finally watched Deadpool versus Wolverine, so now I've got adamantium on one. The Adamantina Formation was once a pretty dry environment with creeks running through it. The habitat would have provided the perfect fossilization conditions, allowing for near perfect preservation of the biodiversity in the area. For Navarornis, this means that the researchers could CT scan and map its 3D preserved remains, reconstructing the brain and the skull in epic detail. Whilst the discovery fills in certain blanks and starts to paint a picture of when bird intelligence began to move towards being more comparable to mammals nowadays, it leaves the door open to more questions waiting to be answered. One such riddle being now how the enantiornithines, like I said, the opposite birds, controlled their flight without the array of brain features enjoyed by modern birds today. As I said, you can find the full article on at Sci News Online, or enjoy the paper in its entirety in the journal Nature. But I thought it was, until the red panda news came up, I thought this one was worthy of discussion
I
because
think it's quite cool. I still picture these birds being rubbish at flying and just sort of flapping on the ground upside down.
Well, these are, I suppose, the way to look at these is these are like the biplanes, or like compared to like today's fighter jets.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting one. Like it is literally in band smack in the middle between Archaeopteryx and its kin, and the and modern birds, and it's just really interesting to see the differences in the sizes of different areas of the brain. Also, I'd love to see like an actual 3D print of this skull to see
what its brain case and everything looked like.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It's a cool one, yeah. But in light of that red panda one, because of the importance of fireworks and stuff, I feel that this one could have been best served as a headline, really. Yeah, there it is.
Should we stick with South America and head into our creature feature?
Yeah, at least it had some relevance then.
It's the creature feature.
Right, well, Aaron, this week, I want you to imagine we are traveling down the mighty Amazon River.
Okay.
You're in a canoe or similar water vessel. You know there are dangers around every corner, meaning that there is almost a certainty you are in mortal peril at some point.
I could run into some poachers.
Yes, I mean, yeah, there are people who could hurt you. There are animals that could hurt you. There are plants that could hurt you. You could fall over and hurt yourself.
That bit is
it's probably more likely.
Particularly risky.
Fair enough. And especially if you were to fall in the water. In fact, if you ask anyone what is more likely to get you if you were to fall in the water, most would go ahead straight away and say piranha. You know, undoubtedly, you would get people saying piranha. Over probably even more dangerous creatures that could be inhabiting the water around you. Things like caiman, anaconda, jaguar.
I was going to go with caiman or jaguar.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would fear a caiman attack more than a piranha attack, but even more than that, the kangaroo, which
throwback to your very first
exactly.
Feature.
So, side note on that, that is in fact, like I say, the first episode of the podcast was on the kangaroo, the giant kangaroo, and it was for a very good reason. It was because I felt that the piranha
start strong.
There are fish that have always fascinated me. Because they are just they are kind of grotesque in their feeding habits, but I feel that the fact that that's a fish that gives people the impression of gunshot victims that are lying in the water,
that's right. Yeah.
And autopsies can reveal a chest full of squirming small fish, is very much overshadowed by this week's creature feature, the red-bellied piranha. Probably one of the most famous Amazonian residents you can think of. Now, that's not to say that piranhas aren't cool, but I think they're cool for different reasons, as we'll get into. So what is a piranha? You've probably got an idea in your head, and it's probably the red-bellied piranha, the species we're looking at this week. Well, piranhas themselves are a group of about 30 fish in the family Serrasalmidae. And they are medium-sized members of charicids. That's not me saying Charizard wrong. That's me saying probably fish species wrong. But this is a group that closely related fish species would include the pacu, which in itself is an awesome fish, massive species that could grow about the size of this couch lengthwise, and be sort of that sort of size tall, has the capability of crushing nuts in its very large teeth, and that's basically their diet. All of the fish in this family, they are characterized by being squished flat, deep lateral compression, it would be the way to put it. So they're flat, and they are quite tall, and usually sort of a diamond shape, like a rough diamond shape if you look at them. They have long dorsal fins, that's the one on top. And all of the families have interlocking teeth that they use to cut their food or crush their food in the case of things like paku. But the piranhas specifically have more interlocking, sharp teeth. The red belly piranha, though, is the one, like I say, is hands down the most famous.
Yeah.
Can you name another species of piranha?
If you'd asked me a few years ago, yes. Now, no. But I think it's going to be one of those cases where you'll name one and I'll kick myself for it.
Probably, yeah.
Because there's at least two of them that are like well known.
Okay.
No, I can't remember it. No.
So red belly piranha is the one that most people are aware of.
Yeah.
There's the black piranha.
That's the one I would have kicked myself over.
The yellow piranha. There's a bunch of them. And some of them are solitary, some of them are group living, some of them do all sorts of like in between sort of living situations, but all of them are South American. So the red belly piranha specifically, which is what we're looking at this week, is distributed widely throughout the South American continent and is found in neotropical rivers of Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, Guyana, Peru, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Venezuela. I didn't know they went as far south as Argentina, but that's quite an impressive list of places that you'll find this very well-known fish. And they'll live in several major tributaries, including the Amazon, which is notably probably the singular most famous river they'll be living in.
Yeah.
All of the little tributaries and that are joined onto those major rivers, they will be in those as well. There'll be numerous smaller water systems as well that sort of feed into them, or areas that basically end up becoming flooded through the wet season and form into, new waterways, essentially. So the flooded forests that you'll see, artificial lakes and floodplains like the Pantanals in Brazil. You'll also find them in oxbow lakes. Everyone loves an oxbow lake from geography. And any artificial lakes as well, where they can get sort of flushed into, essentially. You'll find them in the rainy season in pretty much any of these areas, spreading out. As the season starts to change and things get drier, and unfortunately at the moment in places like Brazil, it is getting drier for longer, their range drastically shrinks and they end up being compressed into smaller and smaller areas, which is not great for them, not great for people either. They'll live in a tolerance between about 15 to 35 degrees C in water temperature, which that's quite a decent temperature for water.
That's a much kind of deeper tolerance range than I thought they would have.
Well, they can in fact go as low as 10 degrees.
Right.
Which that would be like very much lower limit. But those sort of temperatures aren't common in their range. So it's going to be sort of freak occurrences where it gets that low. The 35 degrees thing, that is probably going to be the upper limit of their capability because of water level dropping in a stream and that. And the less water there is, the more it's going to heat up, the less oxygen there is.
Yeah.
They can cope with slightly higher stress, than a lot of other fish, but they very much prefer being in nice, continuous water.
Yeah.
Where they can hide away in amongst the reeds, in amongst the roots of various different trees and plants, and look for food. So the word piranha, as you know, I always like looking into the etymology of where our animals come from. Piranha is from the Tupi language, like most South American animal words. I think we've gone over. In fact, pretty much every South American animal I think we've looked at.
I think everyone that we've covered, we have tried to mention what the etymology of it is from the Tupi language. Yeah.
In the Tupi language, it is essentially translates to biting fish. And that's
not relevant at all.
No, it's got nothing to do with it, really. It's absolute gibberish. But when the Portuguese explorer Gabriel Soares de Sousa first traveled to the area in 1587, the name piranha became what we know them as today. So it was piraras or pirara, was the tupi, and then I'm guessing Gabrielle basically didn't pronounce it correctly,
it got
and
corrupted.
then it became piranha. So that's where we start seeing it. And in 1587, he noted this down in Nautica de Brazil. It then first appeared in the English language in 1869, where it's basically stayed ever since. It's, you know, it's now common parlance. I don't think any of us are unaware of the word piranha. So the scientific name for red piranhas, I quite like this one, is Pygocentris naterii. Do you want to take a guess without looking at what Pygocentris means? You probably
Pygo is definitely to do with tail or back end in some way, shape, or form. And I know that because Ambopteryx longibrachum has a pig, many other dinosaurs, but it has a pygostyle tail.
Yeah, all birds have a pygostyle. Yeah.
Maybe something like
go on the dinosaur route, and you might get it for centrus.
Centrus
or kentrus.
Yeah,
because it's Greek.
Okay, so what's the whole Greek name again?
Pygocentris.
There's nothing after that.
Oh no, that's the first half, okay. And then naterii.
I think Pygocentris means something like spiked butt.
Yeah, basically. So the one that I was able to come up with was pygos, meaning rump, as in pygostyle.
Yeah, rump's a better way, much more scientific way of
rump. It's a good word. And kentron or kentrus, meaning sting. So it's due to the rough scales that many species in this group have going down their tail. They don't have a spiked rump, which I think would make piranhas even more feared in the public eye.
Like a mace.
Yeah, they just look weird.
Water.
And the natter part of naterii is in honor of the Austrian naturalist Johann Natterer, who was born in 1787. Presumably somewhere between 1787 and 1843, he ended up getting the honor of them named after him. I just like naterii because it makes it sound like they're nattering, sort of, you know, gnashing their teeth slightly.
They're not menacingly like gnashing. They're actually just having a bit of a chat.
Bit of a chat, yeah. Well, you might be more accurate than you think there with that. Yeah. So diet. Well, I mean, speak to most people. What are they going to think of piranha eats?
Oh, they'll tell you. What was the thing that went around school when I was a kid? In primary school, I'm sure they said they could strip a cow in under 5 seconds, which is absolute nonsense, by the way. But yeah, that's what people assume it is.
Yeah,
I probably
you're close to the mark in some ways with that, and remind me of that because I'll bring that back to it.
Okay.
So the genus that they belong to, Pygocentris, they're not exclusively carnivores, despite what films will have you believe. They're actually more accurately described, and this is pretty much most of the genus that they belong to, and certainly the red-bellied piranha. They are opportunistic generalists, a diet of which I ascribe to. I'm an opportunistic generalist. Oh, there's a biscuit over there? Well, I'll just have that. Oh, look! Oh, a mug of tea. Thank you. I'll just see that sort of thing. You know. I think that's the best way to live your life. Be an opportunistic generalist.
I had a friend like that. If you left your I mean, I don't drink, but if you left your pint on the hopefully he listens to this.
Stealing.
If you left your pint on the bar and turned to talk to another friend and you turn back, the pint would be gone.
He's living that living that hashtag piranha lifestyle.
I hope he watches this because he'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
The diet for piranhas generally, it consists of live fish, aquatic invertebrates, insects, nuts, seeds, fruits, pretty much anything they can eat. Opportunistic generalists, they're going to eat whatever they find in front of them, whether it's dead, alive, or somewhere in between. They'll quite happily basically eat whatever they come across. Now, piranhas themselves, like I say, are characterized by having those sharp row of singular teeth.
Yeah.
They're triangular, they're serrated, and they are built like blades to puncture, tear, chop, and crush their food. And they work a bit like scissors in that as each pair of teeth gnashes together, you've got those sort of blades slicing against food, cutting things into smaller pieces so they can eat it.
Yeah.
It's also what gives the fish its rather fearsome look. And let's face it is a rather fearsome look.
Yeah, if you didn't know anything about them, I can see why you'd be pretty scared when you finally see one.
Yeah.
You see that.
I mean, I'm not sticking my fingers in its mouth, you know.
No.
Not that I stick my fingers in fish's mouths.
Not that you'd stick your finger in any animal's mouth,
Yeah.
really. If it's got teeth, if it's got a mouth, it can bite.
True. Apart from a slug. I mean, it can bite, but chances of it getting you, very minor. So in captivity, you will often see people put all kinds of things in with these fish, sadly. And it's usually in an effort to look cool or edgy. People will put live items in to make a disturbing number of YouTube or TikTok videos. And, you know, I like to have a bit of a look around, see what there is on a lot of those things of these different animals. I've not gone and watched them for the simple reason I don't need to see animals being killed.
You don't want to add to the
no,
view.
Don't want to give them the credit.
Yeah.
But you type in piranha and things like that into a lot of these search engines, and it will be versus catfish. Piranha tears this animal to pieces. And it's like, great, I get it. You're doing it to be sensational. They are a lovely fish in aquariums as well. I think they look really stunning. With their sort of silvery upper part of their body, tiny little gold flecks going down the side of them as well, and that lovely deep red underneath, making them look really nice. You don't need to be throwing them in other fish for them to tear apart to basically give yourself views and things like that, for a couple of reasons. Not only is it a really bad case of animal cruelty, just purely for your own self-gratification, but it's not great welfare for the animal, or for the piranha itself. They don't need to be fed a purely carnivorous diet. And in fact, piranhas can't actually handle a lot of the proteins and things from large mammals or mammals in general. It's actually not a good diet for them to be eating. So in captivity, most of the time you'll see them fed on small bits of prawn, bits of fish, plant material, or just pelleted diets, because a pelleted diet is going to give them everything that they need to keep them healthy.
It's a
complete diet.
Yeah.
So don't do it. Don't go and watch, or don't feed things to your piranhas that they shouldn't be. Secondly, don't go and watch videos like that. You know, if you want to learn about piranhas, come to us. If you're already here, you're already learning about piranhas with us. So good. So let's talk piranhas.
Were we not?
No, we weren't. No. So
we've moved from orca to piranha. Finally, this creature feature's getting going.
It's only 10 minutes in, starting to build up speed. Now, let's talk to piranhas.
Okay.
Because believe it or not, they do talk. So most people don't think of fish as being able to talk, let alone would they think that they'd have anything to carry out conversation-wise.
Right, yeah.
But you are closer when you said they like a good natter.
A good nat, yeah.
Because,
good chat.
Believe it or not, they do talk an awful lot, these fish. They've got a wide range of vocalizations that they make with each other to basically carry out conversations, to basically solve disputes, usually in a sort of a group capacity, because you'll find that they are living in groups, not because they want to tear things to pieces, but it's safer to live in groups.
Yeah, of course.
There are lots of things that will eat these guys in the wild. That long list that I gave at the beginning, caiman, maybe not anacondas, jaguars, turtles will quite happily eat these guys as well if they're small enough. Probably their biggest problem they have to watch out for is the Amazonian giant river otter, which eats these guys for breakfast. So living together in a group, really important. And you'll find that the older larger individuals tend to be in the center of the group because they've earned their place in the group. But if there's an argument, they will actually sort their confrontations out by barking at each other.
Oh, yeah.
Now, they do this by using their swim bladder and contracting it to make a sound that sounds a bit like this. There we go. If this argument goes further, they'll start chattering their teeth at each other, sort of clacking them a little bit, like going, go on, back off, sort of thing. Cool. If that doesn't work, then they'll resort to chasing each other and nipping each other on their fins with their teeth. Basically a way of solving disputes. So it's it's basically a way that these guys stay in communication with each other. And you can hear an awful lot of communications coming from fish. Just a random one to throw in there. Herring communicate with each other by, well, farting. So yeah, similar sort of mechanism, releasing gas bubbles from their swim bladder, but it essentially comes out like a fart. So yep, you can hear a herring.
I share a kind of kinship with that.
Please don't communicate with me.
And next week's creature feature brought you to by flatulence.
So, on the note of fearsome reputations, because that would give you a very fearsome reputation. Very much for these guys, though, fearsome reputation as a man-eater, we now turn to, well, why they've got this reputation. Have you seen the classic piece of cinema, Aaron, that is Piranha?
That cinematic epic that Scorsese only dreams that he could.
He wished,
he could capture that lightning in a bottle to make his next movie.
Have you seen it?
I watched all of about 10 minutes of it.
Oh, wow.
I turned it off.
I've never seen the first one. It was like a 1970s, 1978, I believe. I have seen about 10 minutes of, I think it's Piranha 3 Double D or something, when it was on on like a movie channel or something, right. And Christopher Lloyd's in it, of all people.
Is he?
Yeah, and I was just like, okay, fair enough. Not a good enough argument for me to watch the rest of this film. No. So I mean, Christopher Lloyd, good actor, but yeah, not that compelling in that bad a film.
I never knew that they even got past the first one, to be honest.
Oh, come on. If we're on to like Sharknado 9, then, we know.
This is all Jaws' fault, I feel. It kind of sparked off the large, like, fearsome reputation animals becoming...
I mean, the classic one that you have to watch, is completely off track, is Shakma.
Shakma.
If we ever do like a watch party, we'll have to do Shakma.
Never even heard.
It is to animal, like killer animal films, what The Room is to serious dramas.
Right.
Oh, pure gold. There's a deep cut there. Anyway, we obviously have to get this reputation for why these fish are so dangerous from somewhere. And if you were to ask someone to name a dangerous fish, pretty much most of the things you're going to get are either going to be sharks or these guys. Maybe something like a stingray or something like that. Most people, you not ask them to name a dangerous fish, shark or piranha. I bet you those would be the ones you would get. In fact, I felt tempted almost to go out onto the street and just basically take people's opinions on this, but it was raining and I couldn't be bothered. So we have a American president to thank for why these guys have a bad reputation.
Oh, right, okay.
Yes, but this one, slightly better reputation in some ways than what is coming down the pipeline, shall we say. Theodore Roosevelt, who brought you the teddy bear and various other different wonders in the wild, was known for being a hunter and, going out and exploring. And by the sounds of it, he did some pretty amazing things, like when he went to a lot of these places. Sounds like he was a very extraordinary person in a lot of ways. But his account of piranhas in his 1914 book, Through the Brazilian Wilderness, which, good name for a book, helped create the myth of piranhas as the dangerous man-eating fish that we know today. So the event itself happened in 1913. Roosevelt was visiting a tributary of the Arapuna River in Brazil, where he witnessed hundreds of piranhas devour a cow that had been slaughtered by local Tupi people. So that sort of myth that you were probably told as in school of them devouring a cow actually comes from an actual event that happened.
Right. Okay.
So they did devour a cow, not in 5 seconds.
I was going to say,
but it's something as I think it was something like 2-3 minutes, or a pretty fast time for these fish to have done things like this. Roosevelt's account, he described the piranhas as the most ferocious fish in the world, which kind of cemented it from that point on. However, the truth is, the event was staged. Completely and utterly staged by the locals, who had starved the piranhas by keeping them in a netted off section of the river without food, and then bringing this cow carcass into them and dropping it in. And if you starve any group of animals and then give them a buffet, they're not going to turn it down.
This is as scientific an event as that I can't remember his name, but the German fella that came up with alpha wolf theory.
Oh, yes.
In the 1930s, just basically threw a load of unrelated wolves into a very small enclosure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, unfortunately, I mean, the locals were obviously doing it because they probably got paid some money. I don't blame them in some ways. You know, local tourist trap. It was probably called Piranha World. Come and see our piranhas.
Piranha Temple.
Yeah. Do you have a cow you want to get rid of? Throw it in here.
Yeah.
So they do sometimes attack sick, dying fishes, animals, carcasses, and they will take chunks out of things. Make no mistake, if you are fishing for these, and they are a local staple of many people who live along all of these rivers and make up a good chunk of their diet, if you mess around with them, they'll bite you. And most of the bites and injuries occur from situations such as people getting them off the hook.
Right, yeah.
Or cleaning their catch in the water, creating loads of motion,
and then
loads of fish guts and everything. And you end up with, well, there's a dying animal over there with its guts bleeding everywhere. Let's go and have a look. And if the water level has dropped sufficiently, because it's that time of the year, they are going to be a little bit hungrier, compressed into a smaller space, and there's a good chance they might bite. So most of the bites seem to be from things like that. But assaults on live animals are incredibly rare entering the water, and mostly are related to, like, say, bites in a case of people getting into an area where they are, where they're sort of trapped in small pools during the dry season. And there's this big creature wandering towards them, whether it's a human, a capybara, or, I don't know, a cow or something. Or they've been put there by a bunch of locals for a president to come and see. As for documented attacks or deaths, I've actually had a hard time trying to find exact numbers. There don't seem to exist exact numbers of how many people have been killed by piranha.
Right, okay.
And that's probably because the numbers are
falsified.
Either falsified for some of the earlier accounts, or as with the two that I'm going to tell you about in a second, there's probably other cases as to why they've died, but piranhas get the blame.
They were caught scavenging, basically.
Yeah, doing what a fish will do.
That's what I imagined the reputation was, really.
Yeah. So some accounts include the fact that on the Paraguay River, this was actually last year, there was concern amongst locals when a 22-year-old man who temporarily went missing during a family outing near the river, south of the capital, was said to have been attacked by a group of piranhas that carried him underwater. Now, keep in mind, I took this exact quote there from, I think it was the New York Post, which isn't exactly known for its journalistic integrity, shall we say, or lack of adding in the sensational.
Is that the one that Piers Morgan writes a column for?
Probably, I don't know.
In which case,
says a lot.
Yeah.
Either way, I can't see a group of piranhas carrying someone underwater. his family was contacted, and the police found his body about an hour later with several bite marks from the ferocious animals that had supposedly killed him. Several bite marks is not really enough for them to have killed you.
Yeah, that's not
It's gonna do damage to you, but I think it's probably more likely that he drowned or something happened. Something else might have killed him, but I don't think it was the piranha. Another attack that happened last year as well. There was a separate incident also last year where a 49-year-old man was killed in the Paraguay River, also in the town of Porto Rossini, drowned as a result of the piranha's attack. There were said to be bite wounds on his face, according to the report. Now, like I say, the connection for both of these attacks is sad. You know, people have died. That's not great, and I can't honestly think of a worse way to go. In some cases, is drowning in a river.
It's
You're
that
very out of
famous,
control.
like drowning versus burning alive. Neither one is a nice
No,
one to think
I don't think.
about.
Yeah, there are, I imagine, nicer ways to go. Drowning in a river is certainly not one of them. But I think the connection between the two is very much that the piranhas have fed on these people afterwards. As I pointed out, they are opportunistic feeders and are not going to pass up a free meal, even if it's in the form of a person. And essentially, the fish have taken the blame because they leave noticeable marks on the bodies. And this means that the piranhas are basically used as a bit of a scapegoat. I don't think you see people going out and blaming the piranhas in the sense of, like, if it was wolves, we would imagine there'd be people firebombing wolves from helicopters and all sorts of things. These are just opportunistic animals that will take a chunk out of pretty much anything. So I think if you were to go laying in the river as well, there's a good chance the same thing might happen. But the fish themselves are amazing creatures. They don't deserve the bad reputation that they get in films. They're not as supernaturally capable of doing what they can do as films will make you believe. They are amazing creatures, and if you are ever lucky enough to have them in an aquarium, they are a really stunning species to behold as well. There's quite a few aquariums around the world that keep them. They're not the hardest fish in the world to keep. It's usually when they get larger. And the one final thing I'll close on, I can remember my uncle lying to me that this is a definite lie, because we never get to see that side of the family a lot. Right. They lived in Cambridgeshire. We lived in Scotland until we moved to Australia. And he used to say, yeah, I've got piranhas. Yeah, I've got piranhas. I used to be absolutely obsessed by the thought of this as a little kid. I can remember asking my dad, going, has he really got piranhas? Went, no, what are you going on about? He's got an aquarium with some fish in it, but there's no piranhas. And I was totally heartbroken at that. The thought, he even said as well, yeah, no, I'm missing one of my fingers. It got me, you know. And as a little kid, you don't really think of these things and go, yeah, well, hang on, wait a minute. If he says he's missing one of his fingers, why has he got all his fingers? You know. And it didn't, you know, it just has always stuck with me that he lied. So if you are watching this, Uncle Robert, I remember you owe me some piranhas, or you owe me showing me some piranhas. I don't know. I'll take some piranhas, please. But either way, yeah, they're really fantastic fish and are super cool. Yeah.
Is it Bristol Zoo that used to have them?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, they were always really cool to see at Bristol Zoo.
They had an amazing aquarium set up there. And when I eventually make it to the Wild Place project, I hope they've got something close.
Or at least last time I went, there was no aquariums and no vivariums to speak of, at least. I don't know what their plan is with that either. So we're lucky enough to know that we've got a listener at Paynton Zoo. So hopefully there's a listener at Bristol Zoo's Wild Place project who
some piranha,
who can just send us a email on the download to let us.
That'd be nice, yeah.
what's happening with that. But just so you know, I did fact check myself on the New York Post, and that is the one that Piers Morgan writes for. So,
oh well, there you go.
I would discard any information that comes out of that dump in
I did find that those accounts are in a couple of other papers, but they're all quite tabloidy. So
right, yeah.
I'm guessing they did happen, but they've probably been over sensationalized in a lot of ways. So
basically, better used as cheap toilet paper. I don't know how cheap a newspaper is these days, actually, so it might not be cheap toilet
I was
paper.
going to say, yeah, unless we go into another COVID situation, then yeah, all bets are off. Anyway, shall we move into our emails?
Yeah.
Bing! You've got mail. Ooh, it's an email.
Right, well, we're into this week's emails, and we're going to start things off with the very non-controversial question that I posed us last week, which was, which continent would you rather for spotting wildlife, North America or Europe? I'll start things off with Jen Babs. I think all recent things considered, I'd go for Europe. Once upon a time, would have said North America, because they seem to have a very particular. Sorry, they seem to have. I would once upon a time have said North America because they seem to have practically every habitat you could imagine. However, now I think the same could be said for Europe with current politics. My other half has replied to that, saying that she seconds this. So I think that's 1 point for Europe. Aaron?
Yeah, that's yeah. Yeah, so next up is Philip Schofield, not that Philip Schofield. And he's very confused though, because he's opted for Asia and he's very excited about it.
Let's have a point for Asia on the board, which wasn't even entered into it.
Neither North America nor Europe. But
Mark Palmer has gone North America because despite the politics, it's a fascinating place for wildlife. So that's one for North America. In fact, we're drawing all across the board now with Asia as well.
And Spencer Seams says Europe because I've never been there.
Good enough reason.
Yeah.
Okay. Jess has said North America when Obama was president. It's 2-2 at the moment now.
Drew has said a bit of a divisive question, guys. He says Europe, obviously.
Oh, Europe pulls ahead.
To which I think you have replied saying, "I've no idea what you mean, Drew." I kind of knew that Drew would have gone for Europe.
Yeah, I mean it's a hard one to pick, and I think everyone's very much gone down the political route with this as well. Well, I think we can say from that, Europe wins.
Yeah. Europe
cool.
Won.
Right, well, there you go.
I wonder if Europe would have won if other continents were.
Well, no, it would have been a draw then.
Opined.
No, it would have been a draw.
You reckon?
Yeah, no, it would have been for the numbers. If Philip Schofield had gone for North America, then it would have been 3-3 as opposed to 3-2.
Yeah, but if we'd actually included Asia in this.
Oh, okay. If we were just putting all the continent, well, maybe that's a question we can have in a future episode. Which continent is the best?
Yeah. Okay.
Just have a big global bust.
Start World War.
Exactly.
War III.
We can trace it back to a question on a Facebook group on a lesser known podcast. Anyway, next week's question, this week's question that we're asking you actually comes to us from one of our listeners. We got sent earlier in the week, a message from Leah Dorr, one of our listeners, and she posed such a good question that I just thought I had to use it.
Stole it.
Basically, yeah. This week's question: you're hosting a natural history dinner party. You can have 3 guests, alive, dead, or even fictional, that you would love to talk to and basically get to know at length. Who are you inviting?
Man, only 3, and I didn't realize that fictional ones could be included.
Yeah, you can have fictional ones.
Oh man, do you know what? Okay, I've just assumed that I'm going first on this. By the way,
go for it.
Okay, so instantly, Sir David Attenborough.
I think that's just if you're not picking him, what are you doing?
Instantly, Steve Irwin.
Okay.
Because I might not agree with Australia Zoo on
Yeah.
a lot of things, well, some things, not a lot of things, some things. I also wouldn't encourage people to go out and be picking up things like he did. However, it cannot be denied the impact that he has had on conservation.
Definitely.
It cannot be denied that his enthusiasm for it acted like a gateway drug for young
Everyone,
generations to get into David Attenborough later on.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it definitely got, because I imagine the conversation just between David Attenborough and Steve Irwin would be amazing. So yeah, David Attenborough, Steve Irwin. And then the third one, I thought I knew until I realized that she had included fictional characters. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going David Attenborough, I'm going Steve Irwin, and I'm going Gordon Buchanan. He's probably one of my favorite wildlife kind of.
Who was the fictional one that you were thinking then?
It's got to be John Hammond.
Oh, okay, all right.
Just to sit Sir David Attenborough in the same room as his brother, as the fictional character.
Right, so you're going the film version, not the book version.
No, not the book version. The book version is very much a villain, but I like the passionate, if a little bit misled, John Hammond from Jurassic Park movies. For those of you that haven't watched Jurassic Park,
what are you doing with your life?
I'm sure most of them have, but there's bound to be someone who hasn't watched Jurassic Park because they're into animals and dinosaurs, but not really into movies. John Hammond was played by Sir David Attenborough's brother, Sir Richard Attenborough, fantastic actor. And he plays a kind of benevolent, if a little wacky, rich dude who is responsible for
the whole thing,
the whole problem. But I would love to have him and David Attenborough sat down together.
That would be a weird conversation.
Yeah, discussing a documentary by David Attenborough set on Isla Nubla. With Steve Irwin in there for some, like excited hyperactivity, picking up compies by the tail, going, oh, he's trying to bite me. But yeah, no. Before I knew that we could include fictional characters, it would have been Gordon Buchanan.
Okay,
I really like Gordon Buchanan's stuff.
So, I mean, mine is just it's only got 2 slots in it because Attenborough just is there. Comes with the package basically. May as well have said, what other 2 people are you inviting as well as Attenborough
to a meal between you
yeah,
and
exactly. And there's so many. I think I'd have to have Charles Darwin.
Really? Okay, yeah, no, that's a good one. That's a really good one.
I'd love the thought of being able to talk to him, either Darwin or Wallace.
Do you know what? A conversation.
I don't know who. Wallace, I think I would love to know more about by talking to him about it. But Darwin, I've always been a massive fan of what he's done, So I'm gonna go Attenborough, Darwin, because I think Attenborough and Darwin would have a whale of a time talking to each other. And I was tempted. I thought you were going to go down the route of saying you'd have Alan Grant there.
Alan Grant, I would have liked. He would have been after John Hammond. But because I'd be more interested in Alan Grant. But it's just like the wackiness of John Hammond and just the insane meta craziness of my little nerd brain trying to handle David Attenborough and John Hammond, Richard Hammond, playing John Hammond in the same room together, talking about dinosaurs. I have to say, a conversation, being a fly on the wall for a conversation between Sir David and Charles Darwin would be fascinating.
That would be, yeah. I'm going to give the 3rd slot.
Ooh. I think I know who you're going to go for, but I'm going to keep quiet because I could just as easily be wrong.
I think it's got to go to Steve Irwin.
Oh, really? I didn't think you were going to go with Steve Irwin.
No. I would love to have met Steve Irwin. And yeah, I think that would be. He is one of those people who is responsible for, like I say, a lot of people getting into wildlife and wildlife conservation. And he's a big reason I used to go out and do exactly that sort of thing of turning over rocks in Australia and looking under logs and probably putting myself in very dangerous situations. But yeah, I think it would be those. And I would love to say Alan Grant, but I get the feeling I'd rather meet Sam Neill. I don't know.
Yeah, I understand.
the character of Alan Grant, I think, is a fascinating character. However, I think I would much rather meet Sam Neill than the character. I agree with you that I think I'd quite like to meet John Hammond. I think he's just that bit more out there. Like it'd be like meeting Ian Malcolm and Jeff Goldblum. Although, to be honest, they're two in the same thing almost in some ways. But yeah, no, it's going to have to be Attenborough, Darwin, and Irwin, which is going to be. You imagine having them on for a podcast. So we just sat them down. So first off, okay, you'd have to explain to Charles Darwin what a podcast is, and probably even to Steve Irwin. I think he might have gone before they were a thing, but at least he's going to know what a microphone is and things like that.
He would have known what YouTube was as well.
But have the three of them talking on that sort of thing would be insane.
Amazing, wouldn't it?
But yeah, let us know.
I thought you were going to go with Mary Anning.
Oh God!
I didn't think
Mary Anning. Oh,
I thought you were going to go Mary Anning when you said Steve Irwin. Can I tell you as well?
The table's not big enough. Put it that way.
No, it's not. We are awful friends.
Why?
Because we both have.
I haven't invited you.
We haven't invited each other.
I just assume
we both invited David Attenborough.
I'm sorry, but
so we both got David Attenborough, and we've not invited each other to this meal.
Just assuming that you're gonna. I'll leave the door open at my place. You leave the door open and go. Oh, just happened
quite by accident.
And
this spare chair here wasn't planned at all.
Okay, oh come on in then.
There's a spare scone.
Yeah,
done with cream first.
Is that what you're having at your dinner party?
You've got to give them high quality stuff.
I'm serving tortoise from the Galapagos Islands because I feel Darwin would be after that.
Scones and macaroni cheese.
Yeah,
pancakes for dessert. That's about the height of my.
I don't think cooking is going to be my thing either. KFC, I suppose, or I don't know. I've ordered a Chinese. Anyway, if you've got your thoughts on who you'd have at this dinner party, let us know through our Facebook page or our YouTube comments page. Or you can even email us as well. Our email is thenathistorykcupboard@gmail.com, where you can send us all sorts of different things. You can also do that through Facebook Messenger if you want to message us directly with your thoughts.
As Leodore did.
Yeah. If you've got any news articles or a question that you want us to read out, then send it to us. We're more than happy to see what's going on and answer you back. So, Aaron, have we got any emails this week?
We do. One thing I did want to shout out just quickly is I said we got a new YouTube subscriber. So welcome to the cupboard, Abby Kirby. Thank you for jumping on board there. But yeah, we've got two emails, and both come from our Patreons. Yeah. So our first one comes to us from Jen Greenhall, who just basically wanted to shout out a YouTube channel, not a YouTube channel, but a YouTube video called Paleontologist Rates 14 Dinosaur Attacks in the Jurassic Park Movies. How real is it? And basically she's just saying how much she likes this guy. The guy's called David Hone.
Right.
You probably know him. That one?
Not personally, but fair enough.
Know of him. But yeah, I think someone that we might look into trying to get on board. She also takes time to just let us know about DinoCon. So I thought I'd shout that out, Jen, because we got the same email as you, so we are watching very carefully. But the other email comes to us from our new Patreon supporter. So again, another hearty welcome to the cupboard to Matthew. Please forgive me because I might be about to butcher your surname. A hearty welcome to Matthew Jedi, I think. I would pronounce that Jedi. Geddy. It might be Geddy. It might be Jedi. If it's not Jedi, pronounce it Jedi. I think.
You just want to say Jedi.
Jedi. Just looking for an excuse to say Jedi. And Matthew says, Hello, guys. My name is Matt, and I've been enjoying your podcast for a bit over 2 years, and love what you guys do. Listening on my Monday work commute is as integral as my morning coffee. So thanks for putting out such interesting and enjoyable content.
Oh,
I've had
good.
Yeah. I've had an interest and love for wildlife for as long as I can remember. I lived the first 8 years of my life in South Africa before moving to Australia. In 2021, I escaped Australia's lockdowns to head to the US to be with my girlfriend. We've since married and are now back in Australia. Safe to say, I've been very lucky in my exposure to lots of different wildlife. I enjoy taking photos, so please feel free to take a peek at some of them, from bird walks and visits to wildlife sanctuaries, mostly from North Carolina in the US. And he's given us permission to share some. You might see some in the background
nice.
here. In addition to writing to say how much I enjoy your podcast, I wanted to share some thoughts from a couple of books I've recently read that I'd love to get your opinions on. The first is from Grant Fowles' Rewild in Africa, in which he refers to big game hunting in South Africa as being good for conservation, for the reason that wealthy people are charged exorbitant amounts of money to travel to South Africa to hunt, say, an elephant, but all this money, supposedly, is invested back into conservation efforts. For what it's worth, Fowles is not in favour of the practice, and neither am I. But I'm interested in what you guys and the wider cupboard community may think about it. So before I move on to your second book, let's just let's answer the first bit. So I will just repeat that Matt has stated that both the author of this book and Matt himself do not subscribe to, buy into, or agree with the notion that big game hunting is good for conservation. So Gareth, take it away.
And here's the hot potato. So yeah, no, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily the best way to do things. I could see an argument to say, if it's in an area, especially a reserve, and there are no big predators present, then you do have to carry out a certain amount of culling of animals to basically stop overpopulation of hoofstock and things, which will destroy the environment that's there. In that case, I could see granting people the ability to hunt certain animals to basically control their numbers as a possible windfall for that particular area. However, we should be aiming to try and have the areas as natural as possible, so having the correct sort of stocking of prey species, predator species, that sort of thing, to basically get it as natural as possible, because otherwise essentially all you're running is just a farm. So it's one of those things that I think should be looked at in some aspects. It could be beneficial, but I think the benefits are vastly outweighed by the negatives. So things like it just then becomes a sort of a not so much a free-for-all, because you don't have people roaming around in cars with firearms and everything, just blowing everything to pieces, but it becomes skewed from its original goal in some ways of being a conservation matter, and it becomes more about a money-making matter of, well, if this is the animals that people want to come and shoot, well, we'll get more of those in. Because a lot of these reserves, they literally buy the animals in from other reserves in other parts of Africa and have them shipped in, essentially. So if you then start going down the route of just having harty beast, for instance, because that's the one that people like to hunt, something, or kudu or eland or whatever, you end up stocking your reserve with more of those to be able to have more of those to make it more appealing to people, and you end up making it artificial anyway, so you may as well just go for the first version and just have a farm. So I don't see the benefit in the long run, realistically.
I see another problem which is related to but opposite to what Gareth is saying. So I would say right from the outset, I'm dead against it. I don't even entertain the thought that it might be beneficial, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Firstly, I think it's a very small, it's not even a jump or a leap, it's a small hop into canned hunting.
I mean, I suppose that's where you ultimately end up, really, is canned hunts.
And the other thing is, the type of people that you attract for that are people who don't necessarily care for the conservation aspect. What they're caring for is the fact that they go to get they go out and they get to shoot something. They get to
they'll use it as a convenient shield to sort of cover what they're doing when
hide
people
behind the fact
basically
that they're soulless. Basically, so you're not really attracting conservation driven people. You're attracting people who like guns too much and they like killing things, but they can't. Yeah.
Justification is then needed.
So then when the conservation organization or the reserve has enough money that they don't need the hunting anymore, where do these people then go? Well, they're gonna find other ways to get in and do that. So I kind of feel like you're both catering to the wrong type of people, where these people need to be educated, not encouraged. And you're setting it up after encouraging these people, you're then setting it up so that when one day this is not necessary, they're gonna find like ulterior paths to doing this. And so it's I can see how if you take everything else out of it, more money into conservation is good. But when you add everything into it, it's like is it Avengers Endgame or Avengers Infinity War? I think it's Endgame when Captain America tells Vision that you don't trade a life for another life. Like killing one elephant to preserve the herd. Elephant. Somewhere down the line, that's gonna backfire quite heavily, I believe. So yeah, I'm not into the idea at all. The second book that Matt brings up is an argument from Bruce Pascoe's Dark Emu, which he then says in brackets is not a book about the Emu War.
Oh, I'm imagining it's sort of a Batman-esque emu.
That's exactly what went through my head.
The Dark Emu.
Or like the Punisher, an emu with a skull painted on its chest. The book largely makes the compelling case that Australia's First Nations people were in fact farmers and agriculturalists and not strictly hunter-gatherers. Pascoe argues, convincingly in Matt's opinion, that Australians should warm to the idea of farming and eating native animals like kangaroos, such as Indigenous Australians have done, because they've evolved with the land and therefore won't shred the soil with hooves or overgrazing like cattle and sheep, which have been introduced. Pascoe also encourages the adoption of native grasses as staple crops, again by learning from Indigenous Australians, as these grasses can better handle Australia's tough climate. Turns out there are some researchers who are looking into this and have found Australian native grasses to be more nutritious than wheat and rice, while also being more sustainable to produce. He's actually sent a link to that as well. It got me thinking about the likelihood of exploring something similar in other countries. What do we think?
I'd heard of this thought before, actually.
I have heard of the idea, the concept that the Aboriginals were
farming.
The First Nation Australians, I should say, were farming and rather than strictly hunter gatherers. And I think I can see it.
Yeah,
a mix.
It's not traditional farming in the sense of what we think of.
It wouldn't
like
be
tilling the soil and stuff like that, but it's more cultivating the plants to grow in a certain plants to become more prevalent.
I suppose what we could call it is traditional farming in a traditional sense, not traditional farming as in the modern traditional farming, which is high intensivity farming.
Yeah, but I would even say going as far back as subsistence farming, where you have a classic field with furrows, and then you plant your crops out like that. That's going right the way back to like Mesopotamia and things like that. But as far as I can glean from this, it is more a case of they tried to get certain plants to grow more than other ones in certain areas. They still might have to walk between a good distance of where those ones would go. It's sort of a mix of hunter-gatherer, farmer sort of thing. That's a cultivation of the land, I suppose, in a weird way. But it should definitely be eating more emu and kangaroo, both of which are delicious, I might point out.
Also, Australia suffers from something similar to the UK does, but probably far more than the UK to an extent. invasive species.
Very much
There's
so.
invasive species here. You've got pheasants.
Yeah, but they're not destroying the wildlife as much.
Not as much, but
as in
but
Australia.
still, to protect British wildlife, I don't see any problem with going out and hunting pheasant for your food. So long as you're not doing it in a drive shoot or a shoot kind of way, the way that these pheasants are actually bred, that style of hunting, that's what I have a problem with. I don't so much have a problem with seeing a pheasant out there and thinking that's my dinner.
I mean, I the only issue I have is
Pheasants are gross.
There's no meat on them, and there's so much preparation.
What about the American crayfish that's in all of our rivers?
Oh no, that I could get behind eating.
See,
those.
that's another invasive species. Now down in Australia, you will have there's deer
Everything.
species, there's rabbits,
Cats, dogs, foxes, camels, llamas, red deer, pigs.
You've got a variety of animals that you
foxes.
You've already said dogs, I think.
Did I? I mean, they're there twice.
Yeah. But the point is proven. You've got loads of invasive species that are causing your wildlife
So
problems.
sure, I want to eat fox.
No, I wouldn't eat fox, but red deer.
Oh yeah, definitely.
If it's invasive, so long as it's done in a controlled manner. With regards to the native species, I mean, sorry. So long as it's done in a controlled manner, that you were saying, like emu and
kangaroo is culled anyway in a lot of parts of Australia because their numbers increase so much. The same with emus as well, because they're very common animals. But if it's done, sustainably, then it's fine. It's just that traditionally, go back 50, 60 years, kangaroo and emu would be considered only good for dog food, and the only thing you'd buy in the shop would be lamb or beef or pork or whatever. Now you can get it. I mean, I was in the shops down the road from us, and there was ostrich. It's farmed ostrich, but they had ostrich sausages that you could buy. You can buy kangaroo here just as easily as you can in Australia. So yeah,
I think native species, so long as it's done in a controlled manner, with care for the ecosystem around.
There you go.
There's not a huge problem, but with invasive species, I see no reason have at it.
Yeah, there's an idea for a nice little fun video.
So it's humane and done with care.
We go and buy some kangaroo steak and we cook it and eat it.
I've had a kangaroo burger.
Well, I think we should do that. I'll get the barbecue out. We can do it full Australian style. Get a nice glass of red wine to go with it. It's got to be like something like a Shiraz, nice and dry. Something like a Jacob's Creek. That's quite a nice one. Goes with it. A little bit on the steak as well. Nice bit of salt, pepper. Do it just beyond rare, and lovely. I may have to go home and cook something now.
Your mouth, I can hear your mouth watering. So Matt finishes off with, thanks again for all the good work you guys put out. Like I said, it's a joy to tune in every week. All the best, Matt. P.S. A major part of my research involves looking at microRNAs, so it was a delight to hear you guys refer to them in the most recent episode in a news article about the most recent human octopus common ancestor. For your information, this year's Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine was awarded to the discoveries of microRNAs.
I thought you were going to say was awarded to an octopus.
Could be sometimes. Octopus are cool. Yes, that's fantastic. And again, thank you so much for joining our Patreon. That's really special. He actually sent a second email. I responded to that one, and I said that we'd talk about the books on the episode. As it turns out, I've not read either book.
No, I haven't either. No.
So neither of us have read either book, but they certainly sound very interesting. But yeah, when Matt responded back to me, he mentioned that he's joined our Patreon at the Niche and Nerds level. So thanks a lot for that. We really appreciate that. Not just the fact that you've done that, but the fact that you're listening.
That's as good a time as any to go into our Patreon.
Yeah. What did I want to say just quickly as well? He said something. That was it. He'd been listening for 2 years. It's really nice to hear from people that we've not heard. It's lovely to hear from all the regulars, but it's really nice to hear from voices that, because you don't, I think as a host, tell me if you feel the same, but I think as a host, I don't appreciate like you get our regulars who we love, but then everyone else is like a number because you don't get much interaction from them. So it's really nice to hear from
a new voice.
From a new voice. Yeah. So thank you very much for that. But as Gareth says, grabbing the mouse here, that is a pretty good time to go.
That is what I say. Grab the mouse.
Yeah. Just make sure it's consensual. The mouse is, and it's done in a humane manner. And it's an invasive mouse.
Anyway, get on with it.
So every week we like to give a little love back to our patrons by shouting out their names because they're wonderful and fantastic, and they do us a great honor, basically. Now these are the cupboard dwellers who are kind enough to support us through a monetary contribution, for which we are grateful beyond words. And those people are, of course, Fogtober, who's been holding down the fort since the start, Jen Greenhall, Connie P, Chelsea McKee, Nick to Nick, and now I'm going to go with Jedi still, okay? And you can correct me if I'm wrong, please. Matt Jedi or Matt the Jedi. Guys, your financial contributions are actively helping us here in the Natural History Cupboard in a myriad of ways. And we really can't thank you enough. So we do, having said that, appreciate everything that all of our cupboard dwellers do for us, whether that's watching, listening, sharing, subscribing, liking, commenting. By the way, comment all you want. We'll do our best to get back to you. It really helps us in the algorithms, and it helps us as well if we actually do talk back, because that bumps up as well. So yeah, please talk to us, and us too, please talk back. But if you feel that we've earned it and you're considering joining our Patreon, there are 2 tiers by which you can do so. That is the Nature Nerds, which is what Matt joined, and the Animal Ambassadors. And there's more information on those on the Patreon website, so head over there to have a look. But with that said, once again, thank you very, very much. Make sure you give this video a like and share it about as much as you can. But yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, massive thank you to all of our patrons there. And like Aaron said, you can get involved in a myriad of other ways that require no financial contribution. You can do that, like I say, by liking, subscribing, telling everyone about it. Go and shout in a river and shout at some piranha. Although you may have to bark at the piranhas. Bark at the
piranhas. Yeah.
Don't clack your teeth at them. That's probably not a good thing. But that pretty much brings us to the end of this week's episode. So a big thank you, Aaron.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's good. And a big thank you to you at home for joining us. And we will see you next time here in the Natural History Cupboard. Bye.
Bye.
One does not simply devour a cow in 5 seconds. It's more like half an hour.
It does get devoured, though.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if that's what the raptor scene in Jurassic Park was all about.